And I am live according to YouTube. Hello, everyone. Gordon Posey, as it always is. No Candy the Wonder Pup here right now. I think my youngest is playing with her, but she will probably show up at some point, and I am ready if and when she does. But until then, if you showed up to see my border collie, you're going to have to wait. I keep viewership higher for a little bit by promising her arrival and waiting for it. Stalled Sentry has shown up. I'm not sure what to make of the emojis. I see a Canada flag. I see the typical barring symbol, this red circle with the line through it, but I don't know what is in there. And then it looks like a globe of some kind. Can't tell exactly what the is being written there, but if you're still here at Stalled Sentry and you want to tell me, I welcome it. It's 9:30 p.m. on the dot. I got off on time. I actually started a few seconds early. I started at 9:29. And it's now 9:30, Sunday the 27th, one day before um, voting day. And Stalled Sentry says it's my attempt at Canada before globalism. Good. Okay, so the three are linked. Canada without globalism. So I got the symbols right. I just not great at cryptography or symbology or whatever ology that would be. Danny has shown up. Good evening. Well, we're here finally, the day before the election. And I'll tell you, it was the shortest ever possible. Well, I don't know if it's the shortest election ever, but it was the shortest election that was allowable under Canadian law, under our Federal Elections Act. An election campaign has to be at minimum 36 days. And bingo, presto, here we are. That's what Mark Carney chose, just the bare minimum. And there, I've done videos on it before. There's a reason behind that. The more we got to know Carney, the more we found out that was not good. Early in the campaign, he said that the decision that Brookfield made to move its head office from Toronto to New York City, that I didn't have anything to do with that. Was the line he promoted. Then it came out that he had sent a letter to Brookfield shareholders when he was still chair at that company, and he had sent a letter to the shareholders urging them to support moving the office from Toronto to New York. Then, after having sent that letter, the shareholders voted in favor of what Mark Carney proposed, moving the office. So the actual move, he's playing fast and loose, sucking and blowing at the same time, while the office moved from Toronto to New York City after he left. He had been urging it. That's not a good look. We all know about the most recent lie he got caught in, where it was a lie of omission. He said that Donald Trump, after speaking to Donald Trump early in the campaign, just after he became installed as prime minister, he said that he spoke to President Trump, and President Trump respects Canada's sovereignty and all this stuff. Trump had been going on about wanting to make Canada the 51st state and all this. Now we're hearing from Mark Carney that now he respects our sovereignty because I'm here, Captain Canada. I've flown back to Canada from all my years in the US and overseas. Now I've come back to save my home and native land. And then we find out just in the last few days that, well, he lied again by omission by not telling us that Trump reiterated his desire for Canada to become the 51st state, not respecting Canadian sovereignty, same as he always has been. Now he's trying to frame it. This is one of my favorite expressions, and it's all over politics. And Mark Carney is learning the game. He's trying to learn how to suck and blow at the same time. And Danny says Carney is a lying sack of you know what, and thank you for not writing the word. I try not to swear, as you know. Danny knows. Danny's here on most of my live streams, almost all of them. Stalled Sentry, I don't think I have seen you here before. Welcome. I liked your comment. Mark Carney, of course, most will know that he's on the board of directors at the World Economic Forum, this organization which came out with a slogan many years ago that said, "You will own nothing and be happy." Will you be happy owning nothing? The globalist types will be very happy if you own nothing. They will be happy. Canadians will not be very happy. If Mark Carney gets elected, we are heading to a crisis. Mike Carney likes to play the fear card. He's been saying the entire campaign that Canada is in a crisis. And newsflash, no, we are not in a crisis. We will be in a crisis. He's softening the ground so that when his planned crisis does come, that he can say, well, I told you it was a crisis, and he will have created it. And how he will create it is by doing what he's been doing as Trudeau's top economic advisor over the past 5 years. He will balloon immigration. He will reinstitute a new form of carbon taxation that'll hammer the heck out of us. He'll engage in more of his favorite quantitative easing, which just means increasing the monetary supply so as to cause rampant inflation like we've been seeing over the past 10 years. There's so many things that will happen under a Carney government. And I'm here to say that I am cautiously optimistic about tomorrow's results, cautiously optimistic that enough Canadians are capable of seeing through Mark Carney and that they will vote in a conservative government. But I can't say I'm enthusiastically optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic. The polling numbers are what the polling numbers are, and I don't know to what degree they can be trusted. There has been an erosion in Liberal support, but again, we're looking at the shortest possible elections that Canadians could have. We could have had as many as 51 days. We could still be, when the writ got dropped, whatever date that was, I forget exactly. It was 35 days ago. Whatever day the writ was dropped, that's how they refer to it when an election is called. They drop the writ. The election is on, 36 days long. Well, he could have made it a 51-day election, which would have meant that we wouldn't be voting for another 2 weeks. But I think Carney was smart in this sense, or at least his political handlers were smart. They know that Mark Carney has skeletons in his closet. They know that he's refusing to divulge to Canadians his portfolio of assets, basically doing what Trump did during his elections, keeping financial disclosure hidden, like Trump wouldn't reveal his tax returns, which is pretty much standard operating procedure in the United States. In Canada, federal leaders, standard operating practice before they go to the polls, they divulge their financial assets so Canadians can judge for themselves whether a prime ministerial candidate has any obvious conflicts of interest or the appearance of conflicts of interest. But Mark Carney didn't want to do that. Makes me wonder, what is he hiding? If there's nothing to hide, then disclose your assets. The only reason to keep them secret is if there is something to hide. That's my take on it. But Mark Carney, like Donald Trump, well, I'm playing by the rules because technically when he was installed as Liberal leader and ergo the prime minister, because the Liberals had the most seats in the legislature in our House of Commons, from that date that he took when he was sworn in as prime minister, he has 60 days before he has to disclose his financial holdings to the ethics commissioner. And then the ethics commissioner doesn't release that to Canadians for another 60 days. So we have to wait 120 days to know what Mark Carney has in his portfolio. And I'm here to tell you that if he loses, he will immediately resign the leadership of the Liberal Party, and he'll go back to Europe, go back to New York. His attachment to Canada it's non-existent. He's here to play the role of prime minister and to push the UN WEF globalist agenda onto Canadians, ram it down our throats, whether we like it or not. And Denny's writing, so he has 60 days to tie up loose ends. show that up on the screen. To a degree, yes. Although, if he gets elected, and let's say, and if it's a majority or even a minority, this minority government that we've been under, this has been rare. Normally, minority governments only last in and around 2 years. That's about the lifespan of a minority government. This minority government lasted a full four. The Trudeau-led Liberals won a minority, got a minority mandate in the 2021 election, and they had to go to the polls September, October of this year. They went a little early, but not much. Not much. They ran it out as far as they could until they could get Mark Carney to, you know, leave Brookfield Asset Management, leave New York, leave his places in Europe, come back to Canada, and stop acting simply as an advisor to Trudeau, destroying Canada, our economy, and to get him to take the wheel, so to speak. Stop running things from behind the curtain, come out front. But because he was behind the curtain, a lot of Canadians think that Mark Carney represents a change from Trudeau. And he does not. He's been directing him for the last 5 years, since 2020, since the COVID stuff began. Trudeau has been behind the curtain acting as Trudeau's advisor. And man, oh man, fill up the live chat. I see you have a number of people watching now. It's Stall Century. You're welcome to fill it up as well with Danny and anyone else. I missed Danny's earlier comment that he's trying to swear less too. And yeah, being ex-military, it's kind of de rigueur. These are just standard operating procedure in the military. If you don't swear, you're not going to fit in too well. Let's see what Danny's writing. Will Carney need a refund for his flight out of here tomorrow night? I sincerely hope he needs to use his flight. Bye-bye. We will see. I'm both cautiously optimistic and at the same time nervous. I don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. All kinds of scenarios are playing out in my mind, and most of them are, they're moot. They're debatable because they're not going to happen. Will it be a conservative minority? Will it be a liberal minority? Will it be a liberal majority? I think everyone will be. I think the chattering classes will be absolutely gobsmacked if it's a conservative majority, even though I would be over the moon. I think the most likely outcome tomorrow is either a liberal minority or a conservative minority. And we've all seen what happened in the last 4 years when the Liberals had a minority after the 2019 election. All they had to simply do was the NDP prop them up. And so they got to operate with a de facto majority because it was called a supply side confidence agreement, meaning whenever there was a vote that came up that had the potential to topple the government. And anytime the government loses a confidence vote, and that can be an actual vote of confidence, the Conservatives on a number of occasions put forth a motion, not a notion, but also a notion. They put forth numerous motions calling on the House of Commons to vote no confidence. So that obviously is a confidence vote. But likewise, anytime a bill had money attached to it, like an economic statement or a budget or any bill that had spending, that would be called a money bill. And the defeat of a money bill is an automatic vote is considered an automatic confidence vote. And so what the NDP under Jagmeet Singh, Jagmeet, not Jagmeet, what the NDP under Jagmeet Singh agreed to do, supply side confidence, is they said anytime a vote comes up that could topple the government, that is a confidence vote, anytime that happens, we, the NDP, will vote with the Liberal government to keep them in power. And Jagmeet Singh kept propping up the Liberals over and over and over again. At the same time, I don't want to trash too much on the NDP, because if the polls are accurate and their support has collapsed to the degree that it has, the NDP, typically speaking, in most elections, they punch somewhere in and around the 17, 18% mark. 14 maybe on the low end, 17, 18 on the high end. Back in the so many elections ago, the 2011 election, when Jack Layton was leader, they punched up near 30% and became the official opposition. But now their support has evaporated. They're probably punching under 10. They're somewhere around 10, maybe less than 10. I have seen some polls with the NDP as low as 6, with most of their vote moving to the Liberals. This is why Liberal Party fortunes have risen so much. It isn't so much that people are thrilled with Mark Carney. It's that they've abandoned the NDP en masse, and most are going, well, okay, I was NDP, but I don't like the NDP anymore. Now, are they going to move right past the Liberals and go all the way to the Conservatives? No, most are going to get to the Liberals and stop there. Some will go to the Conservatives, some, but not most. We're talking about people who are all in on climate change. They think that if Canada stops burning fossil fuels, that climate change will stop. And I'm here to tell you, and I'll state this categorically, if Canada burns fossil fuels, the climate will change. And if we stop burning fossil fuels entirely, the climate is still going to change, because that is what climate does. It's cyclical. There are centuries-long periods of warming and cooling, and we alternate between the two. I've said it many times on my station. From about 1000 till about 1400, we were in a period called the medieval warming period. Got so warm that the Vikings established permanent settlements in Greenland. That's how warm it was. Ice sheets rolled back massively, permanent settlements. That was a warming period. Then in and around 1400, running until about 1800, we entered a period referred to as the Little Ice Age. And the Little Ice Age likewise lasted in and around 400 more years. And there were, with both warming trends and cooling trends, there are cataclysmic weather events associated with them. And then in around 1800, we entered the phase that we're currently in. They haven't given it a name like medieval warming period or Little Ice Age. I guess you could call it the industrial warming period if you want, because it did coincide with industrialization. But would it have happened anyway? I would argue, based on the pattern, that yes, it would have happened anyway, regardless of whether we burn fossil fuels. Let's see what's being written. Stalled centuries, right? I don't really watch TV anymore. Did PP get any positive news coverage at all? Not much. And anything they did say positive, they'd always temper it. What little I saw, I don't watch TV much myself anymore. I don't have a cable or a satellite subscription. I do maybe every month or 2 or 3, I'll go onto YouTube and I will check out CBC Nightly News. And if I want to see what the Americans are saying, I check out NBC Nightly News, just because I want to get a handle on how people are being programmed to think. I say it many times. The media is there to tell you what to think, what to believe, and they even want to tell you how to feel. So I like to, and I'll typically do that at times when I notice a pervasive narrative being put forth. I work now, I left the military June 2021. So now I work in a large retail establishment. I interact a lot with the public in my little tiny town, which tilts heavily senior. So lots of people watch the news. And when I hear a predominating talking point from many different sources, I'm like, I better check out the news and see what people are being programmed to think. And then I'll go, and this happens once every 2, 3 months, maybe 4. I'll check out a nightly newscast just to get a handle on what are people being programmed to think. And Danny thinks at this point it's almost a 50-50 flip a coin. Who's going to win? Guess who's here? She finally showed up. There's Tandy the Wonder Dog, who just went straight for the front window so she could see whoever was walking by. And she's like, wait a minute, there's a video going on. I get a treat. And here she is, there as promised. Tandy the Wonder, who was out chasing rabbits, as Danny likes to say. So shake, lay down, speak, speak. All right, come on up. Say hi to everyone. That's Candy the Wonder Dog. Late, but always around. So let's see what's being. Danny's writing. Hopefully, Canadians woke up, not gone woke. Big difference. Huge difference. I've never been a big fan of saying wake up. Wake up. You heard of that a lot during the COVID period when people couldn't wait to get their shots because it's going to stop me from getting COVID. I get these 2 shots and then I can't get it and I can't pass it on to my grandma or some other old person. This is the end. COVID stops when I get my vaccine. And so many people believe that. And others, you see it all the time. Oh, wake up, wake up. And that kind of language gets people's back up. You're saying, oh, you're a stupid idiot. Well, you call someone a stupid idiot, a sleeping stupid idiot, then their back gets up and they entrench. They entrench themselves in the position they already have. And it's hard. It's hard, especially online. It's far easier to be empathetic in person than it is online. When we're online, we tend to get triggered too easily. Let's see. What's stalled? Century is writing. Yeah, and my name's Gordon. I think it's on the screen, but that's okay. A lot of NDP folks are shifting liberal, and we're getting into something of a binary election. And I was thinking of wearing my old PPC T-shirt because I actually voted PPC in the last 2 elections. Actually, helped out in the campaign for Nathan Lane, I think was his name, the candidate in my local riding. But in 2019, I voted for Frank Vaughan, Vaughn. He has a YouTube station. I would invite you to check it out. He is not a fan of the PPC. After that first election, he was deep in the weeds. He actually did a podcast. He did at Hamilton's Mohawk College. They had a big event that was hosted by Dave Rubin, who's a big time podcaster in the United States. He used to be a member of the Young Turks, Dave Rubin. And he came up to Canada and they had a forum event, like a Jordan Peterson style speaking event, where they were up on stage, sitting on their couches, talking. And it was Maxime Bernier, David Rubin, and Frank Vaughan, who lives in my town. And Frank Vaughan has a lot to say about Maxime Bernier and the PPC party that is not positive. I'll invite you to check out his channel, Frank Vaughan, Vaughn. He was the candidate the first time around. Second time it was Nathan Lane. I think that's the kid's name, young kid. And I campaigned for him. I even helped organize a meet and greet in downtown Brighton, my little town. And he came out and we had, probably 60, 70, it's hard to say over the course. We were there for a couple hours and probably 60, 70, maybe 100. I don't know. It wasn't huge, but we had people come by, check it out. Remember, this was during the height of COVID, September 2021, when we were just on the cusp of the vaccine passport being introduced in Ontario. And I had this event and I got up on the mic and introduced him to give an address to the people who were gathered. When he gave his speech, there were probably 15 to 20, maybe 25 people listening. It was nice. And but this election is binary. It's a choice between Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre. And just as the NDP vote has coalesced mostly around the Liberals, I think anyone considering voting PPC should, and I understand, I get it. Pierre Poilievre is not perfect, but you got to pick the best of the two. And in my estimation, there's no question. If you're a PPC type supporter, who is closer to Maxime Bernier and the PPC platform, the planks that you like? Is it the Carney liberals or the Polyev conservatives? For me, there's no question. It's Polyev every day of the week and twice on Sunday. He is far closer to the PPC than Mark Carney. And so I will suggest there's going to be a lot of tight elections in Ontario in particular. So if you're inclined to vote PPC, I don't want to say it's a waste of your vote. A vote is never wasted, but I would ask you to give serious consideration to marking an X next to the Conservative Party candidate name, whoever it may be in your riding. Let's see what Danny's writing. They have the ability to control the weather since the Vietnam War. JFK video only describes controlling the weather during the 60s. Well, there is an international treaty, and you can look into this United Nations treaty, that signatory nations agreed that they would not use weather modification technology in the prosecution of any wars. That right there, you would not create an international convention to prohibit the use of a technology that didn't exist. That's just common sense. If we don't have international treaties on exploiting the moon's resources because no one is capable of exploiting the moon's resources, whatever they may be. So there's no need for an international treaty. Why would you need an international treaty precluding signatory nations from employing weather modification technology if that technology did not exist? Weather modification technology does exist. And I'm behind on the messages. Danny's reacting to having seen Tandy, the wonder dog. Danny, I like this. This is a good old line. Liberals are like Christmas lights. Half of them don't work, and the other half just aren't that bright. And Danny's saying the NDPers are just liberal light. The NDP tend to be, in my experience, and I campaigned for them, the Ontario version, back when Bob Rae became premier of Canada's largest province, the economic engine that drives Canada. At least it used to be. And Bob Rae's NDP got elected, and I campaigned for Jim Wiseman in the riding of Ajax Pickering. I forget what the riding was called, but Jim Wiseman was a high school teacher. I didn't know him as a teacher. I just knew him as a candidate. And the NDP tends to be a very idealistic and be very anti-business, very pro-labor. And here's the question I would ask to those who are NDP supporters who are moving over to Mark Carney and the Liberals. NDP typically has been anti-big business. Even Jagmeet Singh employs that rhetoric in talking about the reason that he says the reason food inflation is so high is because of the Loblaws and the Sobeys and the Metros of the world inflating costs to drive their multi-billion dollar profits. Well, now you're going from the NDP to a party that is led by a central banker, a man who came from Morgan Stanley and Brookfield Asset Management, with one of the world's largest investment firms. You talk, this is a big business guy, a guy who uses Bermuda to avoid Canadian taxation. And Jagmeet Singh talks about that. But NDP supporters, by and large, a lot of them are moving over to the Liberals. And I will suggest to you, you're far better to move right past the Liberals and go to the Pierre Poilievre-led Conservatives, because Pierre Poilievre is talking about policies that will help average working class Canadians, blue collar Canadians, union members, the traditional NDP constituency. Pierre Poilievre is far more representative of them than Mark Carney is. And I understand that the media has promulgated this idea that Pierre Poilievre is just Donald Trump, is a mini Donald Trump, which is the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard in my life, especially given that it comes from the Liberals. And Mark Carney acts far more like Donald Trump than Pierre Poilievre Pierre Poilievre is nothing like Trump, does nothing like Trump. Number one, why did Americans vote for Donald Trump? A lot of Americans, a lot of Trump supporters says, this is a business guy. He's not from government. We need someone, an outsider, to come in. And what are liberals now saying? Mark Carney is a business guy. He's come from the outside. He used executive emergency powers. Forget this democracy stuff. That's what Trump is doing in the US, and liberals complain about it. But then they're voting for a guy who is employing the exact same rhetoric and talking about using emergency powers the same way that Donald Trump is employing executive orders, emergency powers. The entire trade dispute between Canada and the US, the rationale behind which Donald Trump was able to impose tariffs on aluminum and steel was by inventing a crisis, which is what Carney's talking about doing. We're in a crisis. That gives him emergency power. Trump, same thing in the United States. He said the fentanyl crisis, because of the fentanyl crisis, I have to take emergency executive steps to curtail the flow. And so we're going to impose tariffs. We're going to punish the Canadians and everyone else in the world. And it's the same type of rhetoric from the White House as it is from Mark Carney. Donald Trump in 2016, during that federal election in the United States, Donald Trump, they said, you don't, Hillary Clinton during the debate said, you're not paying you're avoiding taxes. He avoids taxes. And the Trump supporters said, that's because he's smart. He knows how to play the tax system. Now we find out Mark Carney uses Bermuda to avoid Canadian taxes. And the liberals go, that's because he's like Donald Trump. He's smart. He knows how to game the tax system. The disconnect is unbelievable. How liberals are willing to, again, my favorite expression, sucking and blowing at the same time. Donald Trump is bad because he does it, but when Mark Carney does the same thing Trump does, it's good. Trump, I mentioned it before, wouldn't reveal his tax returns. He wanted to keep his his finances secret, wanted to hide them from Americans. And a lot of Canadians said, that Trump is evil. He doesn't disclose. Where are your tax returns? Show us your assets. But Carney does it, and well, that's okay. That's okay. Huh? I mean, the disconnect is massive. I don't think that Mark Carney has anything like Donald Trump's personality. Nobody has Donald Trump's personality. Donald Trump is a bully, and bullies pick on the weak. Everyone knows this. We've all gone to school. And if you're an Xer or a boomer or older, you know that bullies prey on the weak. They look for the weak one. They never pick on the strong. So why is Donald Trump picking on Canada? Because we're weak. Our growth rate among developed nations, G20 nations, top 20 economies in the world, we're 20th. We're the weakest of all the developed economies in the world. We've left our resources and wealth out west in the ground, which is something even Ontarians should care about. Because when our friends in Alberta and Saskatchewan, when their resources are exploited and it brings wealth to their region, that wealth doesn't stay bottled up in Alberta and Saskatchewan. It raises tax revenues in Ottawa, allows for spending on healthcare, defense, infrastructure, roads, all the stuff we need. It saddens me that there are a lot of people in Ontario who look down their nose at Alberta and go, oh, why should we develop your resources? Because it's in our best interest as a Canadian nation to develop Canadian resources that are in Alberta and Saskatchewan. It makes sense to develop our mineral assets in Northern Ontario, our forestry assets in BC. It's just because oil and gas is so incredibly lucrative that we I don't know whether it's jealousy, I don't know what to put it down to, but there is a pervasive attitude among Ontarians that, I don't care about Alberta and Saskatchewan. Well, you should. That's my opinion. We should. Oh, I've got a name I haven't seen before. 2 cents for free. Hope everyone did or will get out and vote. Canada needs everyone. Make an informed decision. We all need representation in the House. I'm here to say that I think now, in an earlier video, much earlier, I had said I expected there to be in and around 18 million votes cast on Monday. And that would be the advance vote and the actual vote for Monday. So total ballots cast, I said I expected around 18 million. And I'm here to say I think there's very real potential that we could get up in and around 20 million. In the last election, 2021, there were basically 17, just a little over 17 million ballots cast. In the election before that, in 2019, it was 18.2. And then one before that, in 2015, it was 17.6. So expecting in around 18 seems about fair. However, I think it bodes well for the Conservatives if we get up to 20, 21. The higher, the better. And if we can get north of 20, I think that bodes well for a strong Conservative vote. Because typically speaking, if you're happy with the way things are, doubling of house costs, if that doesn't bother you, and for a lot of homeowners, and I'm one, will say, well, fine, the value of my home increased. Who cares about the kids? Who cares if we're pricing Canadian kids out of the housing market? I'm looking after me, which is kind of a Carney bank, central banker, Goldman Sachs, Brookfield Asset Management. It's kind of the attitude, look after your own. It's kind of a Trump-like, attitude that a lot of Canadians have. Well, screw the kids. You're priced out of the housing market, and inflation's, you got to go 6-figure debt to get a university degree now. Well, screw you. I got looked after, and there are a lot of Canadians who feel that way. I just find it amazing that so many NDP are gravitating toward that, Wall Street, Bay Street mindset. But it is what it is. I'm not going to shake my fist at the cloud. Reality is reality. Uh, but echoing 2 cents for free, we need to get out and vote. I have been encouraging younger people where I work to get out and vote when they've been uninformed and a lot of kids are not informed. A lot of kids do not pay attention to politics or the news. They have entertainment. They're into streaming shows, into anime. They are into music, alternative, bands and everything. The music scene has exploded with the internet. What else? They're into their sports, and they just don't have time for politics. Back in 2015, a lot of young people came out voted in the 2011 election. I've got the numbers written down here just for quick reference. 2011, 14.7 million Canadians voted. Don't know what the population was back then, but it was probably 32, 33 million. Like, we've had an explosion in population size over the last 10 years, thanks to Trudeau's open door immigration policy, which drives inflationary costs in the housing market, supply and demand. You don't have to be Adam Smith to figure out that if you balloon immigration 750,000 in just 1 year, it's basically adding a province the size of Newfoundland to the Canadian population. If you do that, but at the same time, don't allow, if housing doesn't keep up, if there aren't apartments and houses and accommodation for these people, well, then it's going to be inflationary on what the supply of the housing market is. Yeah, they're commensurate. You need, as people come in, you need to increase the supply of housing, but it hasn't kept up. So in 2011, 14.7 million people voted. Then that shot up by 3 million, just one election. And 4 years later, 17.6 million Canadians came out to vote. And I'm convinced that a large reason for that big jump, 3 million more Canadians, 3 plus, or 2.9, 3 million more Canadians voted in 2015 versus 2011. Why? I'm convinced a major part of the reason was wacky tobacco, weed, marijuana. Kids wanted to be able to get high without having to risk a criminal record, without having to risk arrest, which is what would have happened in my day. If I'd gone to Etobicoke and wanted to buy some hash off Ontario Premier Doug Ford, and that's a real story, check into it. If I'd wanted to go to that convenience store plaza in Etobicoke that Dougie and his brothers used to deal out of, I would have been at risk of being arrested. Kids didn't want to face that, so a lot of them came out and voted for Justin Trudeau, and it's the one promise he kept. It took him a little longer than I think he had mentioned. I think it took a little bit longer, but he did fulfill that election promise, and weed was made illegal. And I'll tell you something, to turn a blind eye to how far Canada's fallen over the past 10 years, you need to smoke a hell of a lot of weed. You got to get high as a kite to think that Canada is is heading in the right direction. But that's just one man's opinion. Let me read what's being written. So I likewise, along with 2 cents for free, I am hoping that we see a big jump in the polling numbers. And given that 7.3 million, I think it's over 7 million Canadians already voted over the Easter, Good Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, over that 4-day period, over 7 million, I think it's 7.3 million Canadians voted, which is a record, more significantly more than had ever voted in advance polling in any other Canadian election, including the last one. So and my suspicion is that when voter turnout is high, especially in advance polling, it's because people are upset with the status quo. They want change. People being motivated to get out in the polls in large numbers, to my mind and others, you'll hear a lot of political pundits talking about this. It signals a desire for change. And that's why I say we've had an early indication of a strong desire for change, in my opinion, based on the 7.3 million early votes. We'll find out on Monday how many votes total. And I think if we get 20 plus million, that'll signal again a strong desire for Canadians for change. People happy with the status quo while things are going all right are less motivated than those who want to change things. And Danny, likewise, I don't consider myself, I don't belong to political parties anymore. I've given up on that because the direction of a party is set by the party leader. I did not like Aaron O'Toole. I did not like Andrew Scheer. Andrew Scheer caved to the dairy lobby that runs basically a communistic little cartel. They call it supply side management. They might as well just call it communist style marketing boards. And he gave into them. And I'm here to tell you, and you can check into this, the dairy lobby in Canada is massive. You look at all the lobbying organizations that work in Ottawa trying to sway the government policy in one direction or another on a variety of issues. And what you're going to find out is that the dairy lobby is one of, if not the biggest lobbying group in Ottawa. I'm punching up in and around 30 people watching the live stream. Thank you for showing up. Gordon Causey, 58-year-old resident of Brighton, Ontario, Canada, Northumberland County. The riding is called Northumberland Clark. Talking about the election. You're welcome to like, share, subscribe. I do a lot of political videos. I also do videos talking about my Christian faith, although knowing that a lot of people are coming up now just to talk politics. I'm not, but I am a Christian. I proclaim Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. I just throw that out there. I recognize that a lot of people are hostile to the Bible, to Christians and organized religion, etc. I get it, and it's cool. Anyway, if you want to like, share, subscribe, and all that stuff, you're welcome to do it and fill up the live chat as is happening. just going through, and I have Shift Wrangler, or I'm going to say Shift Wrangler, because as I said, I don't like to swear on my channel, but you can take out one letter out of Shift and you'll get this guy's name. SW writes, Freemasonry, handed down from the synagogue of Satan, will determine tomorrow's outcome. There is a pervasive attitude amongst a number, I'm not going to say a majority, but there are a lot of people out there thinking that this Canadian election, that it's rigged, it's fixed. And I'm one who is here to tell you that once the vote takes place, once you put your ballot in the box, it's going to be counted, tabulated, and recorded fairly. Now, can there be undue influence by media, by foreign players and such, trying to influence how you mark that X? Yes, that can happen. But once you go behind that little partition, mark your X, you hand the paper ballot to the election worker who tears off, basically it's an identification strips, because they need to make sure that the number of votes they count matches the number of ballots issued. So if a polling box, my poll number was 608, and if they have recorded that 212 people voted in poll number 608, 212, well, when they count, they'll know that based on the little receipts that come off the ballots. Okay, we should have 212 votes in that box, and they count, and there's 215. Well, then there's a problem. Why do we have 215 votes, but only a record of 212 ballots being issued? And there's nothing on the actual ballot that goes in the box that ties it to that strip that you tear off. So you can trust the results. And let's go on. Danny is writing that he, back in the day, that would have been 2011, he voted for Jack Layton. I did not vote for Jack Layton in that election. However, I was at Jack Layton's launch for the leadership of the NDP. I forget who the leader was before Jack Layton. Was it Audrey McLaughlin? I can't remember. But the NDP had a leadership race. Jack Layton, who at that time was a Toronto City Councillor, decided to enter the contest. He was running for the leadership of the federal NDP, and he held a launch. I think it was at the Phoenix. It was at a downtown Toronto nightclub, big stage. And the Bare Naked Ladies, who were friends of his, they lived in the same riding, or at least some of them did. And they agreed to play for his launch when he was launching his bid to be the leader of the NDP. And a buddy of mine, who was a member of the Marijuana Party, believe it or not, asked me, he called me up, he said, hey, would you like to go see Jack Layton's launch party? The Bare Naked Ladies are playing. It's a concert. I'm like, Bob's your uncle, I'm there. And I went and I saw it, and I shook hands with Jack Layton. He glad-handed through the crowd, and it was funny because it was mostly a university-aged crowd, 20-ish, late teens, early 20s, Bare Naked Lady type fans. And Jack Layton he's a very natty dresser, really a Beau Brummel with his, tie and shirt, expensive jacket. And as he came by, I said to him, I said, if you want to get these kids excited, go up there and take off your jacket, take off your tie, and undo a couple buttons and look like a regular guy. But I honestly don't even think he heard me. He paid attention, like he pretended to listen to what I had to say, but I don't think he heard me at all. He was caught up in the moment. Let's see what's being written. I saw the headline of that article about 11 states wanting to join Canada. I take all that stuff with a massive grain of salt. What states are they? Mississippi. We're on about the same par in terms of economic performance. Canada and Mississippi perform about the same. We'll see. Cryptomiri is writing that the PPC candidate I wanted is a doctor and went to the States. No shame. No surprise there. Evening. Let's see. Cryptomeria believes we've got this. We shall see tomorrow. Eat Me, who's in Montreal, is writing they are engineering dimming of the sun in the UK. I've heard some more talk about that, but I haven't read into it. A couple of billions are going into this insane project. So we need to switch to solar power. This is the context I've heard it. So, in an effort to, get the world to go green by bringing on more and more solar powered hydro generation, they're going to, at the same time, dim the sun. Like I said earlier on in this video, and it's probably going to earn it a little flag because according to the pink-haired fact checkers with their PhDs in gender studies who work for Google and YouTube, fossil fuels are the main driver of climate change. Like that's the only thing that makes, the main driver, what causes climate to change. And so my question is, what happened during the medieval warming period then? What fossil fuels were the Vikings using? In the Little Ice Age. What were, that's climate change as well. What were the fossil fuel, or did they stop burning, in 1400, did people stop burning fossil fuels? Come on. We weren't even in the coal burning age. Back then, people were burning wood. Come on. Amy saying, evening, everyone. I'm losing my voice here. Cryptomiri is writing, it's not like in BC, I can do anything about the outcome. Why stress? I voted. It is what it is. Yeah, we'll see what happens and we'll have plenty to talk about tomorrow. I'm hoping that we will be talking about, yay, it's been a conservative surprise. It'll be framed that way if it happens. That's what the media will be saying. They will be saying the pollsters were wrong. They'll have Nanos and Abacus Data, Main Street, and Angus Reid, and all these polling outfits will have their talking heads on the media, and they'll be trying to explain why they got things horribly wrong, and they will have their excuses. I already know what they are. But again, this only comes into play if the Conservatives win. And what they'll say is that the electorate has proven itself to be very volatile. We saw a 25-point lead for the Conservatives back before Trudeau resigned. Then we saw the Liberals surge to a 12-point lead, and then heading into the election, we saw things get very tight. So the electorate is very volatile and hard to gauge during this time. That'll be one excuse. They'll say that there was momentum on the side of the Conservatives, that the Liberals had, under Carney, had gone up to a 12-point lead, but then it had been slowly eroding, and they weren't able to keep up with the momentum. Because when they do a poll, it takes a day or two to conduct the poll, and then those results, it takes another day or so to, pour through that data and compile it and then publish it. So by the time a poll comes out, it's 2-3 days old already. And in those 2-3 days, we find out that Mark Carney lied to us about his phone call with Donald Trump when he tried to frame it as, no more of this 51st state stuff. Donald Trump respects Canada's sovereignty now. He's dropped the 51st state crap. That was the implication that Carney wanted to portray when he characterized that phone call. It's a lie of omission. And now he's trying to poo-poo it and say, well, it doesn't matter. Because he talked to me, the tone was much more respectful. And get lost, Mark Carney, you lied. Own it. Own it. You lied. Own it. But he won't. He's a banker. I mean, it's so funny. Canadians, before used to regard the banks are just in it for their customer. If you're ever at a party and you want to get a conversation going, just talk about, oh, I went to the bank yesterday. Oh, they drive me nuts. Everyone will have a banking story about how the banks have screwed them over or about something the bank did to them. And now those same Canadians who love to complain about the banks are going to elect a banker, including so many NDP. It's unbelievable. Anyway, and again, I'll remind anyone watching, like, share, subscribe, all the fun stuff that YouTubers talk about. Let's see what Danny is writing. He's saying, Donald Trump has Donald Trump's personality. Getting back to when I said Mark Carney does not have a Trump-like personality, nor does Poilievre. Nobody has in the United States or Canada or the Western world has a Trump-like personality. Only Trump. Installed Century thinks something I said or something someone said is very true. I love what Danny writes. Jesus is king. Very true. SRCX thinks Polyev is finished. We'll find out tomorrow. That tomorrow marks the. I will say this: if Polyev loses, because I think that's possible, if he does lose, I am going to say that the conservatives would be best served to hang in with him the same way they hung in with Stephen Harper. Stephen Harper, his first election, 2005 or 6, and he lost to Paul Martin. Paul Martin won a minority. But then they had a leadership review, which is standard operating procedure. It's required if the conservatives don't win government, if they don't win either a minority or a majority, either way, and the same holds true to the liberals. They have a leadership review. All card-carrying members cast a ballot. Do you want the leader to remain on, or do you want them to leave? And so long as the leader gets 70-ish or more percent saying yes, stay on, then typically they will stay on. And I think Pierre Poilievre, if they lose, that he should remain party leader. Hopefully it's all a moot point, M-O-O-T, not mute. Mute means incapable of speech. Moot, M-O-O-T, means debatable because we don't know. It's something that didn't happen. What would have happened if the Hitler had won that war? What would have happened if? Well, there's no way to know for sure because it didn't happen. Hopefully, this question becomes moot, and we won't have to worry about Polyev leaving because his party will form the government. David is saying tomorrow Canada will see change. We will find out. We've got until tomorrow. SRCX is saying the Conservative Party will never back Pierre Poilievre in another election. We'll see. As I said, back in 2005-6, Stephen Harper ran against Paul Martin's Liberal government. Paul Martin was the Liberal leader, and he managed to win a minority. And the Conservatives stuck with Harper. And I think they should, this is my opinion, they should stick with Pierre Poilievre. But we'll see. We got to wait until we see what the results are. David's writing, selfish boomers and low info voters are for Carney. And don't call SRCX just because we have differing opinions. I'm not into name calling. I try to avoid it as much as possible, but guilty as anyone, sometimes I do get triggered. I hate that word, but it's true. Sometimes our ego engagement is another term for it. It's probably better. Someone disagrees with you vehemently, and there's a tendency to engage in ad hominem attacks and name calling. We'll see what happens. Cryptomeria already voted. It'll be interesting to see. Now, there were reported to be very long lineups at times over the Easter long weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I heard people talking about being in line for 2 or more hours, an hour, two plus. And I see that in a fashion, it can be seen as a form of voter repression, because some people will look at a line and go, I'm not waiting in line for an hour to vote or 2 hours. If you're in line, a little bit of voter information here for you, regardless of your political stripe. Provided in Ontario, the polls close at 9:30 p.m. Go to Elections Canada, verify that. I wouldn't say it if I wasn't 100% sure it was true. In Ontario, 9:30 p.m. They open 9:30 a.m. and they're open till 9:30 p.m. I believe that in every province in Canada, people are given 12 hours for that. 12 hours to vote. I think in BC, I'm 90% sure, but I can't say 100. In BC, polls open at 7 a.m. and they close at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. will be 10 p.m. Ontario time. The reason they do this staggering voting time is so that polls close within an hour of each other. So that most of the, we're counting the votes at pretty much the same time, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. By 10 o'clock at night, all the votes are being counted. And in Ontario, which, reality is what reality is, Ontario is where the election will be won or lost. And it's going to be won and lost, I'm here to say, in the 905 region. and that's the area around Toronto. Talking interestingly, and I wrote it down. Yeah, that's the area that Pierre Poilievre chose to focus on in his final, you know, final day of campaigning. He went to Oakville. He moved from west to east. He went Oakville, then to my old stomping grounds of Pickering. Although Oakville is a little bit of my old stomping grounds as well. I lived in neighboring Burlington for a year and a half. So he went to Oakville, then to Pickering, then east to Peterborough, which is actually about an hour away from where I live now. And then finally, he ended off in the Ottawa area at his home riding in Carleton. So, he went at what I consider to be the battleground, the ridings area that are going to determine this election. 416, downtown Toronto, I expect it to be mostly liberal red. Outlying areas like Sudbury and North Bay and my area is going to be predominantly blue, but it's the 905 region around Toronto, and again that's Oakville, Burlington, Ajax, Pickering, Whitby, Oshawa, Bowmanville. These are the areas, of Stouffville, the ridings in and around the city of Toronto. That's where I think we're going to see, and I'm not the only one. This is hardly groundbreaking, not earth-shattering news. Oh my gosh, you're way out to lunch. There are a lot of commentators saying the 905 will be the determining factor. And liberal supporters will say, well, we're going to romp in the 905, and conservatives are saying we're going to kill the 905. Well, we'll know in about 12 hours. In about 12 hours from now, we should have a pretty firm indication. Goodness knows at this time tomorrow night, they may have already announced. CBC News is confident projecting that Canadians have elected a fill in the blank minority or majority government. We'll see. And SRCX is hitting back at David, saying he's neither liberal nor conservative. And you're welcome here. It's interesting. I don't know what your picture is, but it looks to be a picture. It's so small on my screen, but it looks like you have a picture of Donald Trump. I confuse the two because they act so much alike, Trump and Carney, hiding their financial disclosure, gaming the tax system, all these things. Let's see what SRCX is writing out. What I find now, you think that Poilievre is spewing BS. Fair enough. You're entitled to that opinion. But what BS? Like, be specific. Don't just say, oh, Mark Carney talks a lot of crap. Well, what crap? Well, I'll tell you what, if I could say that. I could just say, well, Mark Carney spews a lot of crap. Well, what am I talking about specifically? I'm talking about him making a phone call just after getting installed, taking, swearing in as prime minister. He calls Trump, and then he engages in a lie of omission, saying that, oh, Trump now respects Canadian sovereignty. Now that I'm here, Captain Canada, Trump's backing down. No more of the, and so people are going, okay, no more of this 51st state crap. He doesn't want, good, Mark Carney. Then we find out within the last day or two, Carney lied. Lie of omission. Did Trump continue with his 51st state rhetoric on that phone call? Yes, he did. He continues to want Canada to be the 51st state. Didn't matter what he wanted it when Trudeau was prime minister. Mark Carney being prime minister didn't change anything. But that's not the impression he wanted to create, so he lied. Mark Carney lied to Canadians. He wanted us to believe that he had nothing to do with Brookfield's decision to move its head office from Toronto, taking high-paying jobs from the city of Toronto in Canada to Donald Trump's old playground in New York City. And we found out he lied. He had sent a letter to shareholders urging them to vote in favor of what he and his board of directors were proposing, that Brookfield move its office from Toronto to New York. And the shareholders listened to Mark Carney. So when I say that Mark Carney is talking a lot of crap, I back it up. Can you do likewise? I know it's harder when you're typing, though. If you want to come on with me live, tell you what, SRCX, I'll put this, I'm posting a link to the live chat. You can join. You can come on live with me if you want. And Amy is writing, go spam another stream like you did to Poilievre's rally two days ago. You know what? I don't mind him being here. I don't mind it. Everyone here will know that I'm something of a free speech extremist. And I do not like being in an echo chamber where you only hear your own thoughts, views, and opinions coming back at you. I like being challenged. And so let's see where I walks around like he's got a magic wand. Oh, you don't like the way the man walks. Okay. Well, it's, I personally, I don't like his hair. I mean, come on, substance, man. I mean, I know that there are a lot, like my wife was a big fan of Justin Trudeau. He's a good looking guy. He is. I'm not afraid to admit that. Is that why you vote for someone based on, well, I just don't like the way he walks. Mark Carney's got a much better walk than Pierre Poilievre, okay? So I'm voting for Mark Carney because Pierre Poilievre's walk is just up. It's like he's got something stuck up his ass. Come on, man. Eat me, where from? She's put it out there publicly plenty of times. Montrealese. Montreal. I've got a few Montrealers on here. And we're back to the name calling. I called it out when someone called you a name. I'm going to do the same thing with you, SRCX. I will ask politely that that everyone refrain from name calling. I forget who it was who called you a name. We're not in grade 7 anymore. This isn't the playground. And we don't have to behave like, sadly, all political parties do in the House of Commons. They all play this game of pounding the table and looking like school children. We as Canadians don't have to do it, even when we disagree. So let's talk. Stalled Century is writing, only a true paid shill knows how to spell PP's name properly. Well, I do. Mais je parle français. Pierre Poilievre. Je l'aime. De mon avis, c'est important d'avoir un premier ministre qui est bilingue, qui est capable de parler. Il y a autour de 8-9 millions Canadiens qui parlent la langue française comme une langue primaire. Et Mark Carney, de mon avis, il est proche, mais il doit améliorer un petit plus. That's all I'll say there. And 2 cents. And I like the way you frame this. Legalization is probably the only good thing Trudeau did, in my opinion. And echoing the username says, just my 2 cents. They're free. And that's fair enough. Back then, looks like SRCX. Is that you, SRCX? Not if it is. I'm going to add I think this is, yes, it is SRCX. I'm going to add him to the stage and we're going to talk, hopefully respectfully. It's my stream. I can shut things down, but let's be respectful. And here we go. You are on, my good man. Can you hear me? You may have to unmute your mic. You're all good? I'll get rid of the comment about legalization being the only good thing in someone's opinion that Trudeau did. So what have you got to say, SRCX? I know the alphabet, but I I know A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, but I need a voice. I still can't hear you. Do you have a mic on there? And now it's saying that he disconnected. But at least we got to see what SRCX looks like. Looks like a guy from my age bracket anyway. Oh, looks like he's back. I'll add him back to the stage, see if his mic is working now. Can't hear you. I'll give you another minute. And again, with you had put up this name calling, and I told you where Amy is from. She said it many times. She, like you, has been on the live stream right now, but she spoke to me. She enabled her mic, and we talked, and we don't agree on everything. This is one thing that is sadly missing from today's political landscape, is that people talk when they have differing opinions.
Hello.
We talk, and we don't agree on everything. Oh, do me a favor, this will help. If you have mute the computer, so that not the mic, but the speaker. Then we
Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear. So where are you? Can't hear you again.
How about now?
Where are you? Got it.
Yeah, yes, yeah, Gord, thanks for the invite. And darn. How about now? Hello?
I can hear you.
Yeah, Gord, thanks for the invite. Yeah, and by the way, I apologize for being snarky to the other viewers. Yeah, thanks for the invite. Yeah, by the way, I apologize for being
we all get triggered. It happens, especially when you're typing. You don't get tone.
That's right, and I'm yeah, and I'm
especially when you're typing.
Well, that's right, and I'm yeah, and
I'm going to ask you if you can close the speaker, but leave your mic open, or turn the volume down.
Is that okay? Is that better?
We get this echo.
Is that okay? Is that better?
Oh, yeah, the headphones might help. I'm looking
Is that
around for
better?
mine.
Yes.
I hate them. Okay, try it now.
Is that better? Hello? Is that better?
All right. Device not connected. I'm going to give up on it at that point, SRCX. It's a bit of a pain, but the thing is, it happens a lot on here. If you're not used to doing it, is you get talk back, you get echo, and there's a lag. So I talk, and then my voice comes back a few seconds later, and it's too annoying. Well, I'll give it one last shot, one more shot, and then that's it.
Yeah.
See if it's working. I'll let you say what you need to say. I'll be quiet, and you just say whatever you want to say with respect to tomorrow, the final day, the last day of voting.
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Hello?
I'm not hearing anything.
Ah, darn.
So I'm going to remove you. Don't take offense. It's just this isn't working. Just going to go back to me and I'm going to read through the comments. And SRCX asks a question. I think it's a valid question. Why do people always assume that change is always for the better? Why do people always assume that being progressive, that you're progressing towards something better? And what one person regards as progression, another individual regards as progressing off a cliff. You're progressing. And likewise, change. You can do worse. And so, it's that old expression of better the devil you know. And yeah, things might not be great with the Liberal Party, but it's the devil we know. And I put things down when you talk about liberal and conservatives. The basic divide I see is that liberals see the government as saying, we're from the government and we're here to help, and that is a good thing. Whereas conservative-minded individuals hear the words, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, and they go, oh, crap, again? Conservatives tend to view the government as getting in the way and hampering things. Liberals tend to view the government as being a positive agent. And individual life experience will likely tilt you either one way or the other. I used to view the government, I used to be very liberal minded. I've talked about campaigning for the Liberals and NDP. Now, as I've, getting into my 50s, took a while, but I came over to the conservative side. I have voted conservative, though, in the past. My vote tends to move around. There is no purely laissez-faire conservative libertarian style out there in the mainstream. It's just a question of the degree of government intervention in our lives. Canadians, no political party could survive running on a platform of we're going to privatize healthcare. None. Couldn't survive, because Canadians cherish universal healthcare, or our version of universal healthcare. And so it's just a question of degrees. It just came out that an Ontario prison is paying for some type of gender affirming care for a prisoner, and this was mandated by our courts. That, as per the legislation on the books now, federally and in Ontario, that it is unconstitutional. It's against the law to not pay to have this individual's gender, their sex change operation. And we're doing this at a time when there are Canadians waiting for chemotherapy, waiting for cancer treatment, waiting for knee and hip replacements, waiting for cataract surgery, waiting for all manner of things that will make that are genuine medical conditions, not mental health conditions. And we're performing radical surgeries, sometimes even on children, when there's only so much money in the public purse. So we have differing views. Bonsoir. Kinman, voting for Pierre in the morning. Good for you. Make sure you get out 9:30 a.m. in the province of Ontario here at 9:30 p.m. And I started to talk about this before I got sidetracked. Provided you are in line at 9:30 p.m. or earlier in Ontario, then you get to cast your vote. And I'm fearful that tomorrow people are going to see very long lines. On Good Friday, there were reports that people were waiting in line 1-2 hours, and I'm sure some people said, at least on Good Friday, you could say, well, I'll go back tomorrow, I'll go back Sunday, I'll go back Monday. But tomorrow, if you drive by at 8 o'clock and the line is huge, you can't say, well, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it in a couple days. Tomorrow is the last day. So, and your employer, you will need to check this out. But if you're working, say, a 12-hour shift tomorrow, if you're working and you need time to go and vote, your employer has to give you a certain window of time, 2 or 3 hours, to go and exercise your franchise. So make sure. And SRCX is saying that change could also be for the worse. No? Yes. I think a lot of Canadians reached that opinion in 2015. That was the overwhelming sentiment back in 2015. We had a balanced budget with Stephen Harper at the helm, but it wasn't perfect. There were problems. And so people said, let's have a change. Let's elect this guy, Trudeau. And they did. And they got their free weed, their free wacky tobacco. But a lot of Canadians said, man, things are worse. And in the next two elections, more Canadians voted Conservative than Liberal. Check that out. Just go check out the vote total, popular vote total from the 2019-2021 elections. In both of those elections, more people voted Conservatives than Liberals, but the Liberals won the seat count because the Conservative vote is heavily concentrated in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and they don't have many seats. Ontario, in this upcoming election, there are 122 seats up for grabs. Let's see what my 2 cents for free is writing. And this person's opinion is that change now is important because the last 10 years will be repeated for another 4. And a big part of the reason why Canadians were upset with Trudeau and Carney acting as an advisor was over carbon taxation and gas costing $1.50, 60 a liter here in Ontario. So what Carney did just before the election is he took the carbon tax down to zero, which has resulted in gas prices falling from that $1.50 or so down to $1.30, $1.20 in that range. It's in and around my area right now, $1.23. And so people, yay, gas is cheap now. The reason Carney was forced to do that is because Poilievre had made carbon taxation a major issue ahead of the election that was coming. So Mark Carney realized he was basically putting bullets in Pierre Poilievre's gun. So he wanted to take take that ammunition away from Poilievre. So he, for now, canceled the carbon tax, took it down to zero. So gas prices went way down. And the thing is, Mark Carney is on record as saying that we need a price on carbon. There needs to be a carbon tax, but instead of having consumers pay for it directly at places like the gas pump, what he is instead planning to do, and he has said this, is to impose it directly on companies themselves. So Esso, Mobil, Petrocan, the oil and gas companies, they'll pay it directly to the government, and then they'll pass the cost on to us through higher prices. And you can be sure that forget $1.23. Within a month of Mark Carney getting elected, if he does, we'll be looking at $1.50, 60, 70, because Carney has talked about the need for ever escalating prices on carbon, taxes on carbon, until we achieve this utopian, dystopian nirvana of net zero carbon emissions, meaning Canada releases no carbon into the atmosphere. Like all of a sudden, if that ever were to happen, all of a sudden climate change would stop. Meanwhile, in India, in China, Pakistan, in many countries, I don't like to say third world. A lot of countries are developing their economies. They need cheap energy, so they're burning coal because coal is cheap. It's very polluting, very inefficient, but it's cheap, so they burn it, and it fuels their economy. Meanwhile, in Canada, we're taxing the living crap out of our cleaner built burning natural gas, impoverishing Canadians, and it's doing nothing. The climate will change always, no matter what our carbon emissions are. Let's see what 2 cents is writing. My grandkids can't afford any more years of liberal tax embezzlement and fraud. And Denny, and I make this suggestion to anyone, if anyone annoys you on one side or the other, there is a block function. Let's see what SRCX. I've called every federal election since 1902. I mean, you can say anything you want on the internet. All right, and you'll change your username if you're wrong. That's what everyone does. God, please don't. Jezebel, not Jezebel, Jezebel is writing, God, please let us have Polyev for PM. And SRCX, right? Does God even exist? Depends on your concept of what God is. Going off on a bit of a different tangent, the most pervasive theory about the origins of the universe are to say that, there was this big bang, that all the energy and matter in the universe was contained into a little tiny dot called the singularity, smaller than a quark, and it exploded, and the universe has been expanding ever since. Fair enough. That's the theory. So the questions I would ask are: A, what exists outside of the singularity, and B, into what is the Big Bang expanding? I'm reading a book right now on quantum mechanics and metaphysics, or metaphysics and quantum mechanics. The two terms are somewhat interchangeable. That is very thought-provoking, because we use this term God, and for a lot of people, it conjures up an image of that painting in the Sistine Chapel of that old bearded guy reaching down to Adam, and the fingers almost nearly touching. And, are they looking at each other? All kinds of questions about that picture. But that's kind of the conceptual idea people have when they think of the name God. But really, I haven't brought it up for a while, but one of my favorite go-to passages in the Bible is when Moses comes before the burning bush, and Moses wants a name. What shall I call you when I go to the sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, when I go to your children, and they say to me, this God who has spoken to you, what is his name? What am I to tell them? Give me a name. And to me, that was Moses trying to put God into a box. We used to call cars horseless carriages. Why? Because it described what a car was. It was like a carriage, but it was horseless. It's a horseless carriage. He wanted a name for God, because a name would put parameters on God, and God wouldn't be put into a box. He simply said, I am. Tell them I am sent you. I am that I am. I exist. Now, it's not very helpful for our, limited human psyches. You can't put that into a box. Anyway, enough of a digression. Stalled Century says, it was helpful at least seeing SRCX, even though we couldn't get the audio to work, or he couldn't. But let's try and keep the sniping to a minimum. That's a request. It was nice at least seeing him. I get the impression he's a guy in and around my age. I'm getting up there close to 60, 58, going to be 60 in 2026. I'll be 59 this summer. So, uh, and we're back to the name calling. And many on my channel, SRCX, are strong. The World Economic Forum, this group that flies to Davos, Switzerland, and many individuals have gone there. Trudeau is a product of their Young Leaders program. So is Emmanuel Macron from France. Mark Carney is on the board of directors. Harper has traveled there. Donald Trump just recently addressed them by video link from the White House, probably, or wherever. He gave an address, but it was interesting because all the talking points that the WEF crowd promotes, Donald Trump basically poked them all in the eye, except for one, and that would be the emergence of AI, artificial intelligence, which is something that worries me. Artificial intelligence is taking over this world, and we're still in the infancy stages. We're still in the very early stages. My concern is that when AI becomes ambulatory, if you can take robotics and team it with AI, then AI, artificial intelligence, becomes ambulatory. If AI can run something like an automobile and drive it remotely, well, now AI has vehicles. Drone technology. Once you match drone technology with AI, now again mobility, and then the ultimate in that is robotics. And at that point, is humanity even required anymore? Or are we all going to be like Boris Johnson's father, former Prime Minister of Great Britain? Boris Johnson wrote a book calling the vast sum of humanity, most of us, just a bunch of useless eaters. And you have Yuval Noah Harari, who is a senior spokesman and formerly Klaus Schwab's right-hand man, top advisor. He has said that the way you keep the mass of humanity happy is through drugs and gaming. Just occupy their little minds. Juvian, a Roman poet, back 2,000 years ago, probably around the time of Nero, gave the famous line, bread and circuses. Just give them food, give them entertainment, and then you can do whatever you want to them. And some people are blithely unaware of the World Economic Forum. They watch the news maybe and they see, that so-and-so addressed the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, but they don't pay it too much mind because, hey, the Leafs are playing the Senators and, one more game and we're going to the conference semifinals. Maybe a chance if Montreal can upset the Capitals, maybe we could eventually have an Eastern Conference final between Toronto and Montreal. Wouldn't that be something? You got the NBA playoffs, you got streaming shows, you have all these other things to occupy your time. And then an election comes on and everyone, then all of a sudden people want to play catch up. It looks like, I can't make it out what stalled Century is writing, but it looks like something of a blue wave. And again, not big on swearing. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, though, I will say that. And if you're going to ask others where they're from, SRCX, I think it's incumbent upon yourself to reciprocate and tell people where you're from. It's one thing I notice when you get trolled on social media, and that's the first question that comes up in instant messengers. Where are you from? It's like, it's right on my profile. You didn't even look. 2 cents is from Canada. Lived 9 provinces so far. I've only got 2 where I've resided. La Belle Province de Quebec, Quebec City, when I was at Valcartier, 2011, 2015, and all my other time has been spent living in the province of Ontario. So, and as anyone who's been here any length of time knows, when I was 6 months old, we moved from Crystal Beach area, little town in Welland County, Ontario, called Ridgeway, near Lake Erie. On the Canadian side of Lake Erie, we moved from Port Colborne, Ontario. That's where I was born. Lived in Ridgeway, and we moved to New York City. And I actually did spend more than 9 years growing up in the United States. However, from the age of 12 forward, we moved back to Canada permanently, and I've never resided in the U.S. since. Visited a few times, of course, but Jen Zabel writes, liberal globalist cult has killed too many Canadian citizens. Polyev is our hope to have our country back. And now we're in the name calling again. You live in 9 provinces in Canada and you're a hobo. But that's the triggering. SRCX thinks I'm way out of my lane when I'm talking about climate change. That's fair enough. You're right. I am. I'm not a meteorologist, but then again, neither is Mark Carney. Mark Carney has none of the bona fides required to talk about climate change, and yet he does. And so if he's going to talk about climate change, hey, why not? Now, for what it's worth, I have listened to all sides of the debate. I've listened to the Greta Thunberg types, and not just Greta Thunberg, but individuals who have the requisite skills, like not Al Gore, but actual scientists. And I've also listened to scientists like Richard Lindzen, Lindzen, who was chair of meteorological studies at both Harvard and MIT. And what I've noticed is that within the scientific community, if you open up the floor and let everyone talk, is that this notion of anthropogenic or human-caused climate change is very much up for debate. 97% of climate scientists agree that humans have some impact on the climate, some impact. But there is a wide variance of opinion as to the degree that we impact. Some say it's infinitesimally small. Yes, we impact, but to a very marginal degree. Some say to, small degree. Some say, well, it's mid. Some say it's huge and it's the end of the world. You've got a variance of opinion. Well, what's happened is the media, which loves to politicize science, has latched on to this quote about 97% of climatologists agreeing that human beings affect climate change. And they make it sound like they all agree that it's a massive issue, and they do not. I would invite you to check out Richard Lindzen, Lindzen. Don't listen to me. Here's a guy who was chair of meteorological studies at both Harvard and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And is he right? I don't know, but he certainly has the qualifications. He's certainly in his lane. So anyway, something not a chance. Let's see what 2 cents. Canada doesn't contribute enough to climate change to be taxed for it. China, their population is 35 times greater than our own. India's 35 times greater than our own, and they keep burning coal. India, South Korea, Japan, they want our liquefied natural gas. They want us to take our natural gas, liquefy it, and ship it to them, but we can't because we can't get it to a port city. We can't get it to Tidewater. So instead, they're forced to burn things like coal. 2 cents writes, freeing up our LNG for Asia and the European Union will do, like if carbon is the big bad boogeyman, Canadian natural gas is a solution. But the Mark Carneys of the world supporting bills like Bill C-69, which puts such onerous regulations in place that it basically makes pipeline development impossible, means that we can't sell it. We can't sell it to Europe. Europe is forced to buy their oil and gas from Russia. And then Vladimir Putin is able to take the money that he earns from his oil and gas reserves, and then he can prosecute his war against Ukraine. But, what are they supposed to do? Freeze in the dark in Europe? Or buy Russian natural gas and oil? Because they can't get Canadian natural gas. They can't get we've got a huge advantage in this country because the liquefaction of natural gas means you have to cool it. And hey, I've been to northern Alberta, Wainwright, in the wintertime, and it's freezing. And so we don't have to refrigerate. If you're developing, if you're trying to liquefy natural gas down in Texas or Louisiana, well, you've got to put it into a refrigeration unit and use tons of electricity. Here, we don't need to do any of that because we live in a cold climate in the wintertime. Just liquefy it in the winter. Bob's your uncle. Then you just got to get it. You just have to pipe it out either to the West Coast, Northern Gateway, or get Energy East, or get a pipeline up to James Bay. And Canada could be swimming in money. But Mark Carney, through Brookfield, invested heavily in U.S. coal, so maybe he doesn't like Canadian natural gas, because if the world starts using wonderful Canadian liquefied natural gas, maybe they're going to stop using, American coal, and that'll hurt Brookfield's assets. But we don't know exactly because Mark Carney is hiding his assets from Canadians until after the election because he doesn't want us to see what he owns. I don't know what he's hiding, but it's something, because if there's nothing to hide, he would show it to us, but he refuses. It's clear. Okay, going. We will see what happens tomorrow. Everyone's we'll find out tomorrow who is Nostradamus and who is Nostradamus. SRCX thinks he's Nostradamus, and we'll find out if he is tomorrow. Maybe he'll turn out to be, I'm hoping you turn out to be Nostradamus. I'm not making a prediction. The only prediction I'm really making is that I'm expecting a minority on one side or the other. But we'll see. I think the prevailing opinion amongst many of the chattering classes is that because of the inefficiency of the conservative vote, you'll have in a riding, let's say you have 50,000 people voting, that would be high. Say 40,000. 40,000 total votes cast in an Alberta area riding, probably 30,000 of those ballots are going to be cast for a Conservative candidate. And the Liberal, might get 4,000. So the Conservative Party wins that seat by a margin of, say, 25, 26,000, whatever it is. One seat. Then there will be an Ontario riding where the Liberal, out of 40,000 votes cast, will get 15%, or not 15%, but 15,000. And the Conservative might get 12. So there's a 3,000 vote victory, but it's still one seat. So the Conservatives are way ahead in the popular vote, but the seat count, they're exactly the same. And because there are 122 ridings in Ontario, and I forget how many it is in Alberta. I had it up earlier. I should look it up, but maybe someone else can look it up for me. How many seats are in Alberta? Probably 50-ish, 50, 60. There's a big difference between the seat counts for each of the two provinces. So Conservatives win huge, but an area with few seats. The Liberals, if they can win more seats, even if they win them by tiny margins, they'll lose the popular vote like they did in the last two elections. The last two elections, more Canadians voted Conservative than Liberal, but the Liberals won the seat count. SRCX, I think you've beaten it to death. You're hopefully you're from my perspective, hopefully you're counting your chickens before they're hatched. Hopefully you're that guy holding up the sign saying Dewey wins. Famous US election where everyone said it's a done deal. We know who's going to win. The American election, Kamala was widely expected to win that election. Same in 2016. The polls aren't always right. The impression I have had is that Liberal support is a kilometer wide, but only a centimeter deep. I don't think people are overly committed to the Liberals. I think it's just that they looked at Mark Carney and they go, oh, head of the central bank, from Bank of Canada, Bank of England, oh, that's good. It's funny. We used to always bitch about bankers. Now we're voting for one, or a lot of Canadians are. We'll see. We will see what happens. Tinman thinks that only idiots will vote for Tin Man crying. We'll see what happens. I hope you're right. Well, assuming you're right, and I don't like to say that Liberals are necessarily idiots. I just think they think government's the solution. Hey, I'm from the government. I'm here to help, and Liberals applaud, and Conservatives go, oh crap. What kind of mess are they going to make out of this? Let's have wide open immigration. Let's take Canada to 100 million. And yay, the government said, and Conservatives go, well, wait a minute. Shouldn't we make sure we have the infrastructure to support a growing population? We don't have the infrastructure to support the current population. Maybe we should. No. Liberals say yay. I mean, that's one thing, one area. And the difficulty is that there's a tendency, and this has been ingrained in us, to think of anyone who's anti-immigration in any respect. And I'm not anti-immigration. I'm anti 750,000, a million people a year beyond our capacity to accommodate them. We do need immigration in this country because our birth rate and our fertility rate, it's so low. We don't have enough babies in this country naturally born to replace the people dying. So if we didn't have immigration, we would be in deep trouble. So we need some. It's a question of how much. And certainly we don't want to be bringing in so many people that we don't have the capacity to accommodate them, that it doubles housing prices in 10 years. Oh, wait a minute, that just happened. That's what happened over the past 10 years. We've seen a doubling of housing costs. Why? One of the reasons is because, hey, everyone come in. Are we building houses for them? A few, but not many. Well, shouldn't we be building more? No, we're Liberals. Let them eat cake. I don't know. And SRCX has never voted. This keen political advisor guy who's called every election going back to Confederation. I'm exaggerating, obviously. Saying he's never voted and never will. You sound now SRCX, you are sounding like a troll, but whatever the case, that's fine. Airworks, thank you for voting conservative. Hoping for we're all hoping for change except SRCX. And now we have the anti-religious guy quoting Jesus. Let he among you who is without sin cast the first stone, said by Jesus in the Gospel according to John, when the woman caught in adultery was brought before him, and they said to Jesus, "The law of Moses said, such as these are to be stoned. What say you?" And Jesus looked and he said, "Let he amongst you who is without sin cast the first stone." And starting with the oldest and down to the youngest, they all walked away. And then Jesus said to the woman, "Is there nobody left here to condemn you?" And she said, "No, not one." And then Jesus said to her, "Then I do not condemn you either. Go out and sin no more." One of the most sermonized passages in the Bible. I love it. Airworks voted last Saturday, and we have Chechi here. Easy to get triggered by ignorant people, and some people just aim to trigger. It's like siblings almost. You know what'll get under your sibling's skin. And now SRCX is just being a smart ass, and that's okay. I've been known to be a smart ass myself. I don't really consider that word a swear. My father was never one to engage in profanity, except on the basketball court or the baseball diamond or the hockey rink. Then he could hang with the best of them. But in mixed company, never. However, the one swear he would say when things were bugging him, he'd go, "That bugs my ass. That really bugs my ass." And so I always put that in a lower category than all the other profanities out there. Let's see, what's Airworks? I'm volunteering tomorrow afternoon for the Conservative candidate. First time ever volunteering. Great, you're getting involved in the political process. That's wonderful. I imagine you're going to be a scrutineer, maybe. Just make sure scrutineers, no matter what party you're working for, don't say anything. They'll give you a name tag and it'll say Conservative Party of Canada. It'll be black and white. And you're not allowed to say anything that could be construed as attempting to influence a person's vote. You're there to observe and make sure everything is above board. When the polls close and the door closed, you're there to observe the counting to ensure that if someone put their X in the circle clearly marked and it's a liberal vote, that they count it. And likewise, when it's a conservative vote, you're there to observe and make sure that nothing untoward is happening. Chechi, the old line, so funny, I forgot to laugh. I'm assuming that's towards SRCX. Airworks is saying, what time would we know who won, do you think? Monday or Tuesday? The closer it is, the later it'll be before we know. In many elections, most elections, maybe all of them in my lifetime, the results have always been known before they even start counting the votes in British Columbia, which is sad. People in British Columbia are waiting to see if their candidate won, and they turn on the CBC, CTV Global News, and they say, dun, 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 we are now projecting that Canadians have elected this government. And British Columbians are like, you haven't even counted our votes yet. This time, if it's close, those ridings in BC may actually count. We'll have to wait and see. If the Conservatives romp in Ontario, or if the Liberals romp in Ontario, they're probably going to call it at the Ontario border. And I'm guessing 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Polls close at 9:30. Doesn't take long to count ballot boxes. The one ballot box that's going to take a while to count is the ones in Pierre Poilievre's riding, because there are 91 candidates they targeted Pierre Poilievre's riding because the Liberals didn't fulfill their election promise to end first past the post voting. So they attacked the leader of the Conservative Party's riding with this protest, 91 candidates. Crazy world we live in. Something 100%. Let's see. Stalled Sentry, thanks, no idea what I'll be doing. Let's see. And SRCX, you always ask where everyone's from, but you never tell us where you're from. You sound like one of those scam artists on Facebook. Stalled Sentry believes that 905 West, talking about Oakville, Burlington, that area, will be liberal for sure, sadly. We'll see. We'll see. The 905 is what is going to determine this election. Well, I'm anxious to see if Joe Tay wins. He's running in Don Valley North, and the liberal candidate for that riding suggested to Chinese language media, but he said it in English it was a Chinese language media event, but he spoke in English, at least in this part. And he said Joe Tay is wanted by the Hong Kong police because he's promoting democracy and free speech. And so if you kidnap him and take him to the Chinese consulate, you can get a bounty of 184,000 Canadian, a million in Chinese Hong Kong currency, which is just under 200 grand Canadian. He said, oh, just kidding, but it's true. You can do it. You can take him. And Mark Carney stood by him. Mark Carney said it's a teachable moment that this liberal candidate, sitting MP and 28-year veteran of the Toronto Police Force, needs to be taught that in Canada, we don't advocate for political opponents to be kidnapped and handed over to a foreign government. And Pierre Poilievre was able to talk about that because of the fact that he refused to be muzzled by the liberals because the liberals set a trap for him. The liberals wanted him to get a security clearance in order that they could silence him, put a muzzle on him. And after briefing him on things like foreign interference from China, putting bounties on the heads of Canadian citizens, well, now you've been briefed on it, you're not allowed to talk on it, or we could criminally charge you with breaching the conditions of your security clearance. And Poilievre is obviously too smart to fall for something that stupid. Thomas Mulcair, former leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh took over from Thomas Mulcair. Thomas Mulcair supports Pierre Poilievre in that decision. He doesn't support Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. He's a Labour guy. But on that score, on Pierre Poilievre not falling for the Liberal trap, he says that's obvious. Pierre Poilievre made the right decision. It's not me talking, that's Thomas Mulcair, former leader of the NDP and former leader of, at the time, Her Majesty's official opposition. Danny's writing Poilievre, go Pierre. Danny's saying Pierre, God willing, we'll see. And we've got Tempo 529, Blue Wave, love seeing all the messages. And man, the live stream is full. Let's see what Donna is saying. Trump, Carney, and Elon are business partners in Brookfield. Fact check it out yourself. Yes. It's on the Moose on the Loose podcast. I haven't watched it on there, but it is true. Carney is invested in all kinds of, he's all for pipelines overseas, like in the Middle East. Through Brookfield, they invest in pipelines. He just doesn't want Canadian pipelines. Okay for other countries to get rich, exploiting natural resources, just not for Canadians. I don't get it. Stalled Country. Am I hosting an Election Street live stream? Yes. I'll be going live sometime around 9:30 once the polls close. I've been invited, even though I haven't been actively involved in the Phil Lawrence campaign. I have been in contact with them. I'm all over social media. I think I've been somewhat recognized. I think they know who I am on my live stream, and so they reached out to me with an email inviting me to the election night, hopefully victory party. I'm confident we're going to win this riding called Northumberland Clark, but I'm not. We need to do well in the 905. I am not in the 905. My area code is 613. So, and the 613, except in the Ottawa area, will be predominantly blue. It's the 905 that's going to determine this election. And don't worry, you know what? I had other friends, I've had people I've invited on, and we've had the same issue. I'm not going to take SRCX over to task over technical issues. He tried to talk, there was echo. Not everyone, I'm not even that great at this live streaming YouTube stuff. I keep it as bare bones, basic, and simple as I can, just because I don't have massive technical skill. And Jane Spearin is saying, good show. I appreciate it. If you're referring to my live stream, you're welcome to like, share, subscribe. I always appreciate people joining in and commenting in the comment field, not just on the live stream, although I notice when the live stream's on, that's when people like to fill that up. And man, is it ever. And Stalled Century said, at least props for stepping up. I appreciate the fact that he was willing to try. And I wish it had worked, but whatever. Some have blocked, and that's available to you. Let's see what Donna's writing. Carney told the CBC and Global, and Carney and the CBC, CTV, and Global are getting sued for all the lies they were telling about Pierre. They will be sued for slandering Pierre. Good enough for them, but you reap what you sow. I'm not aware of that. I wasn't aware that there was any pending lawsuits. I think that there should be lawsuits over the reporting that the mainstream media did and the censoring they engaged in over truths during the COVID era. They censored truth and promoted lies. They said that if anyone dared to suggest that we don't have enough data to determine the efficacy of the COVID jabs, if anyone had said that, they were shut out. They weren't allowed to talk. They were censored. But you were fully allowed to say that 2 shots will provide robust, long-lasting protection to infection. And once you're protected from infection, then you can't transmit. You were allowed to say that. You were allowed to promote what ultimately turned out to be misinformation, disinformation. And they should have been sued for that. Unfortunately, science in today's world has been politicized, as I talked about with the climate debate. Mark Carney has no credentials to pass himself off as an expert on meteorological events or climate or anything of that nature. He has a PhD in economics from Oxford, fair enough. Sure, University of British Columbia, experts say that he engaged in plagiarism, but whatever. He went to Harvard, he went to Oxford, he's got his PhD in economics. He doesn't have a PhD in meteorological studies at all, plagiarized or otherwise. So shut up about climate, Mark. You're not qualified. And you're setting economic policy based on a theory that you're not qualified to have an opinion on. This world's gone nuts. What's Jaron Swickle is writing, I want the Liberals to win at any cost. And we got a Liberal, there we go. I don't care at this point. It should not be a choice given how much of a hero Trudeau was during the pandemic. Oh, God. I didn't get vaccinated. I was in Aylmer, Ontario with 1,000 people. I paid attention to none of the rules. I listened to nothing that they told me. Didn't get vaccinated, didn't wear a face diaper unless absolutely required. Met with people. I went to churches all over Peterborough, Kitchener-Waterloo, Aylmer, Napanee, places where people were sane, where they weren't afraid of the air that they breathe, who the 6-foot distancing rule that Anthony Fauci was forced to admit he pulled out of his ass. He was asked after the supposed pandemic, he was asked, what was the data, what scientific research, what kind of trials were conducted in determining this 6-foot distancing rule? And he said, well, there was none. There was no science behind it. That pulled it out. I mean, he didn't say I pulled it out of my ass, but he might as well have. That's where it came from. There's no science behind it, no data, nothing. So Justin Trudeau forced we're talking about a time when the abused were forced to shelter in place with their abusers. We took vulnerable populations and took away their supports. You talk about, and meanwhile, who got richer? The Weston family, the Jeff Bezos, Amazon, Home Depot, the big boys. The Mark Carneys of the world got rich from COVID. The banks, the big investment type guys like Mark Carney, they got rich. Well, a guy who owned a hair salon or a barber shop or a little mom and pop store or a small little restaurant with a single mother as a waitress, trying to put food on the table, they're the ones that got destroyed. They're the ones declaring bankruptcy. Mark Carney, Justin Trudeau, they were fine. And don't get me going on COVID. And they compare Pierre Poilievre to Donald Trump, whereas you want to talk about Donald. Mark Carney is amazing. Okay, I love him. He hides his financial assets. That's what I do. I wouldn't reveal my tax returns. Hillary wanted me to reveal my assets. I said, no, I'm not going to do it. Mark won't show his to Canadians either. None of their business. Okay. And MAGA voters, MAGA in the United States and the MAGA liberals will vote for him. They'll vote for him. They don't care. They don't care if he won't disclose. Mark Carney won't develop Canadian natural gas or oil. That's great for America. That means ours is worth more. Supply and demand. I know about supply and demand. Mark knows it too. He's heavily invested in American coal. Okay. Mark's a smart guy. I want Mark. I want Carney and the liberals. And Donald Trump is on record during a U.S. mainstream media interview saying that liberals are easier to deal with because Donald Trump's a bully and he likes to pick on the weak. And under the Liberals, under Mark Carney, Canada will remain incredibly weak. He's been advising Trudeau for the last 5 years. And I'm still, I've got to catch up. I've got to end this. I like what Freud's Wet Dream is writing, that the devil we know froze our bank accounts. That's something you would expect to see in communist China or Soviet-era Russia. You would not expect that in a free and democratic society, in a free and democratic country, which is what Canada is supposed to be. And in Canada, according to our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, we have the right to go to a place like Parliament Hill, where protests happen all the time. There are protests happening there right now within the last few days with all the Palestinian flags and blocking traffic and everything. Are they freezing their bank accounts? Of course not. And I don't think for what it's worth, I don't think they should. Protesting in Canada, whether I agree with someone or disagree, protesting is a right. Peaceful protest is a right. Now, you can get one guy walking around with a Confederate flag or whatever, one idiot, and that idiot is responsible. Only morons will try and say, well, there's one Confederate flag, so that means everyone out of these 10,000 people is a racist. Bull crap. That one guy who incidentally was heavily balaclava masked up outside to hide his identity because he was probably working for the government, probably working for Trudeau and the Liberals, and just wanting to. People are, Canadians, a lot of times when we're in states of fear, we're not very smart. And a lot of Canadians were propagandized into being afraid of COVID and to being afraid of anyone who had the unmitigated gall to stand up for our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It was disgusting what happened. Go back and check out my videos from that time if you want. I know a lot would just rather forget that period, think of it as a bad dream, but I'll tell you, with Mark Carney in the Prime Minister's office, he's going to foist another crisis. He's saying we're already in a crisis. We're not in a crisis. That's just typical liberal fear mongering. We're not in a crisis, but he wants us to think we're in a crisis so that when he manufactures a crisis, he'll say, see, I told you. And now I have to engage in extreme government overreach to overcome the crisis I created. Don is writing, that's true. They have no right to judge Pierre, not their right. If God, who does the judging of all of us, not the people, but that's what Carney and his liberals do. They know there seems to be widely varying opinion. You got SRCX as the one voice, but I don't think he's alone, suggesting it's going to be a liberal win, maybe even a liberal majority. But then there are many others who are equally confident that this blue wave is coming and is going to crush the liberals. I'm in the middle. I'm hopeful that conservative victory is in the cards, and the bigger the better. But I'm very much in the middle. I live in something of a, it's not the canary in the coal mine exactly, but we have a lot of seniors in my town. It's popular with the retirement community. They're building more retirement homes as I speak. A lot of like I'm 58, I'm going to be 59 this summer. And I'm I'm below the median age. Median is half the people, if the median age is 60, that means half the population is under 60, half is over. I'm under the median age. My guess, I'd have to check again. My guess would put the median age in this town probably around 65, half the population over, half the population under. And it's older people who tilt older, boomers and up, who quite often vote liberal because the liberals, hey, we got money. We got lots of money. Print some more. Carney will get rolling out the quantitative easing money printing machine, flood more money into the marketplace, drive inflation up. But hey, inflation is good because I own a house. So now my main asset, screw the kids. Screw the kids if they'll never be able to afford a house, and if they can't afford to get a decent, post-secondary university degree, well, screw them. I got mine. That tends to be the attitude of not all, but a lot of older people. And this riding has a fair number of them. But that's my town, Brighton. I'm next to Port Hope and Coburg. And you talk about fentanyl and the drug crisis. It's bad in those towns. The crime, and a lot of it is drug related crime, is exploding in those areas. And a lot of people are fed up with it. And they know that the liberals are catch and release, catch and release. We don't have enough money. We're too busy funding LGBTQ plays in Tanzania and promoting, LGBTQ transgender rights in Gambia. We don't have enough money to keep people in jail in Canada, because otherwise we'll have to, stop giving away billions of dollars to promoting transgender insanity all around the world. And so we don't have the money. So catch and release, catch and release. And you get a guy like Pierre Poilievre comes along and starts talking about it. And then the media tries to say, well, this is kind of like what Trump talks about, isn't it? It's like, no, Trump doesn't get everything wrong. Trump recognizes the fundamental fabric of reality, that there are two genders, and that a man should not be allowed to compete as a woman and beat the crap out of a woman in a boxing ring. I think 90% of the population agrees with Trump on that. There's the extreme left-wing Antifa fringe nut jobs with their pink hair and their PhDs in gender studies who don't think, well, gender is just a societal construct, and there are endless number of genders. I'm here to tell you there are two genders, male and female. And but when it comes to personality type, that's a spectrum. There's a basically limitless number of personality types. There are just too many. There are just too many components to personality, and you can be anywhere on a scale of 1 to 10 on all of them. And so it's almost like, to use the term snowflake, no two people have exactly the same personality. And some personality traits are associated more with male and some more with female. Agreeableness is tended to be viewed societal-wide as more of a feminine trait. However, does that mean that if a guy is high on agreeableness, that he's a woman? No, he's just a man who's high in agreeableness. Aggression, competitiveness are thought to be male traits. But does that mean that women can't be aggressive and competitive? Of course not. And just because a woman is aggressive and competitive doesn't change the basic fabric of reality, doesn't change the chromosomal makeup of her DNA. She doesn't all of a sudden grow a Y chromosome because she's aggressive and has that type of personality. So personality is a spectrum, but gender is binary, male and female. Anyway, it's enough of a rant on that. Stalled and SRCX called a truce. And SRCX, like a lot of people, and I'm guilty of it too sometimes, just want some attention. You just want your voice heard. That's kind of why I have this station. I don't hear my thoughts, my views, my opinions being represented very often. I find they're, and I have a hard time getting my voice. I notice I put some videos out there, and I wonder to what degree they're throttled. I know that we've already had it admitted by the Facebooks and YouTubes and Twitters of the world that they will throttle certain content if it's not the agenda they wish to promote. Whereas if it is the agenda they wish to promote, then they can amplify the exposure so that even more people see it. And I wonder to what degree the difficulty I have in elbowing my way into this crowded YouTube space has to do with me talking about the wrong things. Underground Nation, who I guested on a podcast with him, who's a young man from Brampton, great young kid, 25, young kid, 25, fully bilingual. Watch his channel, very interesting kid, fully bilingual. He born in Chicago, but then moved almost immediately to Montreal, and then down to when he got into some trouble. I guess he was a troubled teen, getting into, he called it turbulence. He was turbulent, so his parents sent him down to live in Haiti. And he was down in Haiti for a number of years, thought he was going to finish high school down there, and then they brought him back, and he lived in the Ottawa and Brampton areas. Very young, interesting cat, and I'll invite you to check him out. But he initially, when he started doing his podcast, was very pro-liberal, and his station got tons of views, lots of exposure. But then he looked at things more deeply and decided to change, and he went over to the conservatives, and then his views went way down. And it makes me wonder, is it because there are way more liberals out there, or is it because YouTube, Facebook, and the Twitters of the world, these algorithms, are they suppressing conservative content? It's an open question. But the way you get around it, I don't know to what degree the likes and the comments and the live chat mitigates against that, but I do know sharing. And I know it's not easy. I mean, this is not the height of entertainment, far anything but. But if you think someone might enjoy what I rant on about, gab on about, I invite you to share this out widely, and then encourage people to subscribe, because that helps build exposure. Because people look at a station and they say, oh, what's he got? 300 subscribers? He's nobody. I'm up around 12. I'm punching up toward 1,200. It's still guppy. I'm still a guppy in the ocean that is Facebook. If I could get up to 10,000+, then then people, oh, maybe I'll subscribe. I mean, there is a herd mentality to human behavior. Anyway, let's, Adam A is here. We don't have a real conservative party in Canada. Media has made conservatism a dirty word, and Trump is the boogeyman for low IQ liberal voters. As I say, with Trump, some things I do like, some things I do not. I genuinely believe that Donald Trump recognizes that the nation state of China, Chinese communists, China is poised to overtake the United States as the world's dominant economy. It's long been projected to happen sometime around 2030, or a few years after. And I think Trump genuinely is trying to forestall, trying to prevent China from becoming the world's dominant economic power. And if China does become the world's dominant economic power, It would not be long thereafter until they became the world's dominant military power. And I think Trump wants to forestall, prevent that. And now the question is is he doing an effective job at it? That's up for debate. But under previous administrations, be it the Biden administration or the Obama administration, I don't think any effort was being made at all. It was just, oh, well, China's going to overtake us. Oh, well, that's the way the cookie crumbles. So, well, and maybe there may be a fifth column within the United States. I certainly think there's a fifth column within Canada. That is, Trump uses the term deep state. I prefer Trojan horse, fifth column, kind of an enemy within. I think the Chinese, through their intelligence apparatus, has infiltrated the Canadian government, possibly even, I suspect, the Canadian judiciary, our courts. I think they have a lot of sway and influence in this country because China is an incredibly wealthy nation, and they hold most of the world's non-sovereign debt. So you can buy a lot. If you've ever, it's a bit of a Hollywood thing. I mean, the movie 300 of Leonidas and the 300 Spartans at the gates of Thermopylae, the hot gates, that battle that took place, I don't know, 3,000 years ago, however long ago it was, Xerxes. And at one point in the movie, you find out that there's been a guy in their Senate or their government apparatus, the Spartans, and they've been debating. And this one guy who has been very much, let's appease Xerxes, let's bow the knee, let's do what he says, he gets killed. And when they stab him, a bunch of gold coins fall out of his pocket, and with Xerxes' face on them. He's been in the pocket of the enemy. And I think if if the same thing were to happen in Canada's parliament, we'd see a lot of Chinese currency, Chinese yuan spilling onto the ground. There's money buys a lot. So let's see what Donna is saying now. Caron, the Liberals save no one's lives. There are no heroes. We owe them nothing. They owe us for. Carney is going to be horrible if he wins. Wow, it is tomorrow. My goodness. No, not yet. Not in my time zone. Tomorrow. Oh, yeah. Wow, it is tomorrow. You're talking about the election. I thought you meant, well, we bled into the next day. We will in 14 minutes. I got to end this. I've gone over 2 hours. Today's last polling show 43 libs, 39 conservatives. We'll see if that's right. And that's old information by now anyway. Like after the polling, it takes them a couple days to do the polls, takes them another day or so to go over the results and compile them, and then they come out. So by the time polls come out, they're already old info. But when you get to within 5 percentage points, you're dealing with the margin of error. All these polls, they'll always say accurate within 4 or 5 percentage points. So that for the Liberals, that means they could have as much as 47 or as few as 39. And the Conservatives could have as much as 43 or as few as 35. It's a range. And what really matters is a lot of people saying they're going to vote Liberal. Will they show up to the polls? I suspect that though, looking at Pierre Poilievre's rallies, I think the people who are voting Conservative are committed to getting out on voting day. They're committed. They're committed supporters. I think there's a lot of people going, well, I guess I'll vote Liberal. Okay, one for the Liberals. It counts the same. They call you up and, will you be voting for the Liberals or the Conservatives in the upcoming election? Let's face it, it's a binary choice. That's what most people are answering. And I think the Liberals are more prone to have someone go, I guess Liberal. And then, someone who says, definitely Conservative. I think there's a big difference there, but that each counts. One is the same. Is that guy who's like, I think Liberal. Is he going to get out and vote? That's where I think, and this is what I'll be talking about tomorrow, depending upon how the results shake out. And yeah, it's come out. Jackie Mason is here. Jackie Mason Walsh. I love Jackie Mason. Great old comedian. I can do him a bit. Very rapid fire. Connie, great guy. So much like Donald Trump. You want to see Donald Trump? Donald Trump hides his taxes. He won't do financial disclosure. Mark Carney, same thing, same thing. MAGA, liberal, same difference, okay? Donald Trump hung out with Jeffrey Epstein. Pictures, we see the pictures. We got pictures of Mark Carney. Mark Carney hangs out with Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend. Same excuses. MAGA didn't care. They voted for Trump anyway. And liberals, they don't care. They're voting for him anyway. Mark Carney, he uses Bermuda, takes his taxes, pays them through Bermuda. That way he doesn't pay any. No Canadian taxes. Donald Trump did the same thing. And MAGA didn't care, and the liberals don't care. They don't care if a guy avoids taxes. They said about Donald, they said he's smart. And liberals in Canada, they go, Mark Carney's smart. He's avoiding taxes like Donald. Come on, guys. Like a lot of the comments here. Our kids need a conservative government. The pendulum tends to swing back and forth, and it's gone way too far to the left. I'm going to go to my right because on the screen that's left. We've gone way too far to left. Time to bring it back. And then eventually it'll, in all likelihood, go too far to the right. And then it's time to bring it back. Oh, that we could stop it sometime around 6 o'clock or between 5 and 7. But once momentum starts going in one direction, it goes to an extreme to the point where, we've got men beating up women in sporting events. And then people wake up and they go, wait a minute, the left has gone too far. And we go to the right, and the right goes too far, and we go back the other way. And that's been Canadian political history going back probably to Confederation. Carney's book is called Values. And I have not read it. I don't really want to. Mark Carney has enough money, doesn't need any more from me. But Mark Carney is all in on net zero. He's all in on Agenda 2035, Agenda 2030, the Great Reset, and I don't want anything to do with that. I got Stefan writing 3734, liberal tears from JCP. Mohammed Khan is here saying conservatives will win by majority vote. I hope you're right, Mohammed. Stalled century, I hope so. Mohammed saying Conservative Party trophy tomorrow. What do we have? Soulsy Boy is saying conservatives will win by majority. We're going to find out tomorrow. And let's see what JCP, my opinion, you cannot deny the rallies Pierre has had. Add to that the people who follow people like Pleb, Moose on the Loose, Clinton, Jaws, Jasmine, Northern Perspective would be another one I would add there. This is the thing. I do think these voices are somewhat suppressed by the algorithms on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and certainly on Instagram and TikTok. They don't get the same exposure. You have to seek them out. But they want to keep the liberals in their echo chamber. Anyway, and JCP had something cut off. Sorry about that. It's not me. Thinks we have this. Oh my goodness, so many messages. Mohammed and all his friends, family are voting conservative before they vote liberal. We need change. We do need change. I was in Mississauga. I have my wife has two nephews, my nephews-in-law, young guys, going, and they live in Mississauga. They go to the University of Guelph. Said, who are you voting for? They said, Polyev, all the way. And that was with no prompting. That was the first thing I asked them after our standard greeting. Hey, how you doing? Happy Easter, happy Passover, the standard. And I said, you guys going to be voting? Oh yeah, Polyev. Like, hallelujah, great. Young too. See what LJ's writing. Doesn't matter how unlikely. Come on, super. I just want a conservative win. And majority would be best, but I'll be happy with minority. But one thing scares me in the event of a conservative minority. I did a video on this. It says explosive. The conservatives could win a minority, and Mark Carney may pull a Donald Trump and refuse to vacate the prime minister's office. Hold on to your hats if it's a conservative minority. But before I talk about it, that's one of the possibilities that has to come into play. If the Conservatives win a minority, Mark Carney might try and pull a Donald Trump and hang on to power. So hang on to your hats. We'll see tomorrow. If the Liberals win, then it's out the window. If the Conservatives win a majority, it's out the window. Well, we will see what happens. What's Max writing? Good evening. We made it. It's in God's hands now. Yeah. There's nothing's gonna. We got to wait till 9:30 at night, basically, and then we'll have probably within 15, 20 minutes, we'll have an indication of which way things are going. And this is reading what Airworks is writing about watching the rallies and the energy and the crowd and such. This is where I say I think the support for the Conservatives is much deeper and more enthusiastic. I think Liberal supporters, there's a lot more of, I guess I'll vote Liberal. I guess. Yeah. I guess he's better. Yeah, but they're not they don't have that same emotional commitment that Conservatives are all in. And I think that could result in a surprise tomorrow, but we will have to see. We will see. Oh yeah, Danny's bringing up obviously in relation to something I said earlier, about all the COVID nonsense. We've entered into the age of the religion of scientism, where science has become far too political, where we have guys like Mark Carney with no background in meteorological studies. He doesn't know anything about climate. It's not his background. He's out of his lane. And yet he wants to talk like he's an expert. And the population writ large has been propagandized into just blindly accepting that climate is, we're in a crisis situation. And no one with an opposing view is even allowed a seat at the table. That's not science. That is not science. That is politics, and politics on steroids. And Ratha or however you want to say that, is blue wave and blue hearts, hopefully. Max is asking everyone to hit like. Thank you. I've punched up in around 50. This has been pretty good. I've gone higher before during I think I got up near 100 when we had the Trinity Bellwood, when the Conservatives romped to a victory in a by-election. This is going to be interesting tomorrow. And someone obviously liked my impersonation of Trump. I'll end it off with an impersonation of Trump. Donald Trump, okay. Mark Carney, everyone, you have to vote for Mark. He's like me, okay? Okay, Mark Carney is amazing. He's going to make America great, okay? Because he's going to keep you weak. And I want Canada to be weak. Because when Canada's weak, I make America great, okay? Okay, because I'm going to drill, baby, drill, okay? But I don't want to compete with Canadian oil and gas, okay? So you keep it in the ground, and Mark Carney will do that. Mark Carney will keep you poor, okay? And then we get to be rich. A little bit of a Trump impression with the hat. How do I look with hair? Max is getting back to the Ottawa protest. Carney's failure to disclose. Oh, yeah. Mark Carney, in fairness, personality-wise, is not like Trump. Neither is Poilievre. Nobody is like Trump. But when it comes to his actions, Carney is very Trump-like. And I'll argue that point with anyone. And then Max says that the one guy with the Nazi flag at the convoy was probably the same liberal planting fake buttons on the Conservatives, this idea of Buttongate, when Liberal Party operators got caught bragging about the fact that they'd gone to a Conservative function and put down Trump sounding like buttons to try and, it's just schoolyard, typical liberal, although in fairness, there have been Conservatives who've engaged in the same type of thing, but not at that scale. Viral Stigma, who I've seen before. Just got home from the rally. Seems so weird seeing cars lined up for over a kilometer in a farmer's field. Yeah, he was in Oakville, Pickering, Peterborough, and then he finished off in Ottawa, Carlton riding in Ottawa. But when he goes to Oakville, he's going to draw people from Hamilton. He's going to draw people from Halton Hills, from that area. When he goes to Pickering, he'll get people from Oshawa, Whitby, Ajax, from Port Perry. They'll come from around Peterborough. We'll draw people from my area. And then, when he goes to Carlton, he'll get people from Bell's Corners and, into the Ottawa Valley, people will go. So it's not just that one riding. Great to see. Great to hear your comment, Viral. And Captain, I don't want to say that, says Blue Wave. Hillbilly says this is not only a political battle, but a spiritual battle. One of the guys on this stream, Hillbilly, Danny, loves to quote from Ephesians, where, this isn't a battle of flesh and blood. I forget the chapter and verse. I should remember it, but I'm bad that way. And Donna saying that Trump is not our problem, Carney is. So I've got way too many messages to get through them all. I apologize to anyone I left out. Stefan let me know that there are 34 seats in Alberta. I'll take you at your word. I'll take it you looked that up. Ontario, I know I checked, has 122. So you see, we're on an order of 4 times more seats than they have in Alberta. And so I'll leave. Got one I haven't seen before. Fleur Mauve, please call your Toronto and Quebecers friends and convince them, only one, not to vote Liberal. Our path to victory, Toronto and Montreal areas. And that's the thing. In Montreal and Quebec, they can vote for Bloc Québécois, anything that elects less Liberals. In Ontario, if you don't want to vote for Pierre Poilievre, well, don't go and vote for a central banker who's going to impoverish you. The things that's why you don't like conservatives. Well, that's what, the old style conservatives, that was your complaint against them. Mark Carney is exactly what you didn't like to vote for. So go vote for the NDP, vote for the Green. You don't have to vote Liberal. You don't have to vote for a lying Ghislaine Maxwell elbow rubbing, slime ball like Carney. And Danny gave me the reference, for it is not flesh and we do not battle flesh and blood, but it's spiritual warfare in the spiritual realms, in the heavenly realms. And that is true. Even science admits there's more than one dimension. And here's the quote directly. I don't know if this is King James or New King James or, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places, or some translations will say in the spiritual realm. And even science, physics, acknowledges that there are potentially an unlimited number of dimensions. Anyway. And thank you for everyone who came out. I've punched up 30, 40, 50 plus. Wonderful. I'll end it the way I always do. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. And may the Lord grant you peace. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Look for me to go live sometime shortly after 9:30. And if you haven't voted, get out. And if you're voting Conservative, get someone else out with you. We all know that person who, I don't pay attention. Can you help me out? Ask them. Can you help me out? I'm really excited about Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives winning the election. Could I ask you to come with me and cast your vote for Philip Lawrence or whoever the Conservative candidate is in your riding? I'd really appreciate it. You will be amazed at how many people will say, well, all right. Because when you help, people like to be helpful. And when you help someone, when someone says, can you help me out? And you say, yes, you get a little dopamine rush. You get that chemical in your brain. I'm a good person. I'm helping. So ask. And I'll leave it there. God bless everyone. We'll see you all tomorrow night.